各位观众朋友，大家好，欢迎收看 JxJ 论坛。Welcome to J&J Forum. We have our old friend Jim Noteware and me, Jimmy Ma here, and we're very lucky to have Daniel Lee today on the show. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Jim.
Thanks for having us.
Yep. Daniel, it's nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again, too.
Yeah.
Daniel, you're running for... I'm sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
I was just going to say you're doing something useful. You're running for office.
Yeah,
in real life, you're a lawyer, so this is a great step up.
It is a big step up from what I usually do. Yeah. I would say that it's a lot more impactful.
Yeah.
Well, can I take the other sense as someone that sees how hard it is to run for election here in this hemisphere? Is that I think being an attorney is great. He has a family, he has kids, he has a very busy life.
Oh, he does.
Yeah, Daniel has a lot of hobbies and he's good at it. I mean, I know he's a car collector and trader and you know, he does a lot of things. So to me, this is a second job. And I have a feeling he's probably using his own money to help his campaign.
Yeah.
I feel like. Yeah. So
it's an investment. Yeah.
But Daniel has he wants to change. He wants to help more people. So more impactful is the right thing. That is the right way to think of it. Being a public servant. Jim, you're very familiar with how elections go. I mean, you've been elected. You many in your lifetime. You've done so much. What advice would you give Daniel in this election, particularly with this district?
Well, before I do that, let's bring the audience up to speed on Daniel's goals. So, Daniel, I'll just ask you a couple of questions, which I'm sure you get asked all the time, but assume that your audience here is brand new to this. Why are you running, and what do you hope to accomplish both in the campaign and then when you're fortunate enough to be elected? What kind of change would you like to see in the Texas legislature or Texas overall? Very serious question.
The main reason why we're running, and I say we because my family, my wife, my children, and even my parents, they make sacrifices. They make sacrifices in time. They make sacrifices in money. They make sacrifices as far as us being approached or harassed by Republicans. So we make different types of sacrifices, and we all do this together. The main reason why we're doing it is because while I'm practicing law for the last 15 years as a litigator, we've seen too many laws and rules that are in place that affect our citizens, our clients on a daily basis. And we just got tired of telling them, contact your legislature, contact your congressman. There's only so many things we can do at this level because we're at the bottom. We see what the results are when the laws are made and they don't tie up all the loose ends and they're not drafted appropriately and properly, right? And so I can go into the details about every single type of law we do. We do anything from civil to real estate, commercial litigation, and we'll do transactional cases as well as family law and criminal. So we've done it all, and we've seen how impactful the law is in a negative way. We've seen it impactful in a positive way as well. But as an attorney, I think that I can bring an eye to the state legislature and as a litigation attorney, because there's not that many litigation attorneys that are that are in the state legislature. They tend to rely on the lawyers that are already present and working there to draft up the legislation instead of having an extra eye. I think it's very important that the person voting on it has some sort of legal background, whether it's reviewing contracts or trying these cases in court. Because I've seen and heard a lot of these so-called experts in legal. I would consider a legislature and legislative representative or senator as a expert in the legal field, right? They have to be, because they're the ones who are actually creating the laws. They should be able to explain them. And I wouldn't say 9 times out of 10, but a good number of them do not know how to explain the laws that they have created, including my opponent, right? And so I'm running in my district because I was going to run anyways, but I got drawn into my district. And so when people say, well, why did you pick this particular race, right? I was going to run in this race regardless. It just so happened my district used to be 28 and it got flipped into 26. So I am not going to put away my plans because someone chose to bring me into their fight. If that makes sense.
Yeah, in Texas, you have to run in the district where you reside.
That's correct.
Congress, it's a little bit different. Anybody can run in any district and represent the people of that district. But I happen to think that's a good requirement, because how can you represent the people if you're not one of them? So I think that's good. But I mean, you've got a lot of good causes, good rationale to run. What are some of the issues that you feel most strongly about, Daniel?
Well, there's several issues that I think need to be addressed and need to be heard. Obviously, we have individuals that prioritize certain things like special sessions for redistricting versus special sessions for addressing gun violence, right? We have people that have been in party for way too long that do not prioritize, human life over certain priorities, such as making sure that our districts are drawn a certain way. And I don't find that I don't find that appropriate, and I don't find that that's a good representation of us as representatives and senators and governors of our state. We have to prioritize the people first, right? And that's a clear act of not prioritizing. When you can't hold a special session to address a major issue such as human life, whether it's healthcare or whether it's gun violence, and you prioritize something else, that sends a bad message to everyone. And not only that, telling people that, oh, we'll handle it in 2023. You guys just aren't important enough to us, right? I think that sends a bad message, and it's not what our Constitution and our laws were made. The creators of our laws, the forefathers, did not intend on that. That's not what the intention was. And so we need to change that, and we need to vote and support the right people to make that happen. Well,
obviously, we the people has a lot of meaning, but give me an example, 1, 2, 3, of where the Texas legislature, in your opinion, is not keeping the interests of the people as its priority.
Well, I'll say this: our power grid could have been legislated a bit more stringently to account for some of these overages that we are receiving this summer, right? And my understanding is that there were reports and people that came out to evaluate our grid and said that not enough was done. That's one example. Another example is that the heartbeat bill that was created, one of the legislatures that I've spoken with or seen in the interviews stated that when they passed the law, they didn't intend on Roe v. Wade to actually get triggered and overturned. They did it, but there was no intention of it to actually kick in, because if they'd known that if it would have kicked in, they wouldn't have put such a stringent or punishing violation such as jail time, losing medical licenses for doctors. And And
Mhm.
when I say that, I'm talking about the abortion ban, right?
Mhm.
The abortion ban essentially, I believe most Texans don't support
Mhm.
because that it allows incest and rape to go essentially unpunished. It punishes doctors and it punishes other people that are involved when essentially the doctor and the woman should be the only two people having that discussion on whether it be done or not, instead of having criminal punishments and financial punishments for the two people that are making those decisions. And if you look at the bill, it's terribly drafted. So that's number two. Number three, obviously,
Okay.
open carry and the elimination of our CHL licensing. We don't necessarily need a CHL to have a handgun anymore. That upsets a lot of us that are CHL holders, because why do we spend all that money for if you were just going to let everyone get a gun anyways? And that makes no sense, because I believe that if you have a gun, just like when you have a car, there should be some level of training involved, or some type of class, just like you would when you have a vehicle.
Mhm.
I think everyone can have a gun. You just need to go through the right parameters and go through the right training, because like a vehicle, you can hurt someone.
Mhm. You can and will and do.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to assume majority of Texans are against the current iteration of abortion laws. I think the number was pretty high. It was 67% or whatever it was. Now, that is on that note, what do you see is the biggest issue facing your district today?
Well, so we've been talking to a lot of the residents out here, whether it's in person or by telephone, and what they're mainly concerned about in my particular district is property taxes. My district is a very educated and on average, I wouldn't say wealthy, but they do good. They do good in their life, and
Mhm.
a lot of them are homeowners. And the main thing that they're concerned about is the rising cost of property taxes. They're concerned about their children and their education, the public education, because they moved over here to Katy and Richmond
Mhm.
one purpose of having good public education, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And my school, for example, principal quit and 20 teachers quit, right?
Mhm.
So public education here uh, needs to be supported better by the state, and it needs to be supported better by the school district, because I believe that there's a there's a fight between raising property taxes and rising costs of schools, because the schools need teachers that get, I mean, they need better teachers, because we're actually drawing from engineers or retired mathematicians and computer science, I guess people that are actually not teachers in their profession, but they are coming to fill a need, which is very commendable, but it's not ideal, right? Because you'd rather have someone that has long-term training in being a teacher, or new people that have come in as young teachers, because I don't believe that the state of Texas, in our education system, in our higher level, is building that bench. And we need to continue to motivate our next generation to want to be teachers by raising raising the pay, and number two, making the job a little bit more wantable, right? Like people, after they get the job, I talk to these teachers, because I'm actually the first male vice president in the last 10 or 15 years in my kids' high school. And what I've been hearing is that these teachers are stressed out. There's too much being put on them with the STAR test, and there's other requirements that are in the schools. So we need to make it easier for them to do their job and want to be there. Because being a teacher in this day and age is not going to be enough. It's not going to want to keep them there. And I'm worried that, with all these issues, that we're going to start having the quality of our public schools go down.
I might supplement what you say. We're not going to start having the quality of the school going down. It's been on a power dive for some time now, and so what do you think? What do you think the solution is? You've talked about quality of the education, and you've said in order to increase the quality, we need more money. Where's that money going to come from?
Well, there's options that we have in place. I believe that we need to create new ways to make money without raising our property taxes. And one way, I believe, would be opening up the legalization of marijuana. Now, this past year, they expanded medical marijuana usage to cancer patients and PTSD patients. However, they took it away from individuals that were in pain. So I would say that if we legislate and we broaden that, and now we have to make a discussion, do some research and have a discussion on whether or not it expands into recreational use. But I believe if we can expand the medical side and additionally have a discussion on how we could regulate and tax a recreational consideration, I believe that we would generate enough income for that gap in the property taxes. And our state right now, in certain cities and counties, they're not prosecuting small amounts of possession anymore. And so I believe that once we do that, the gang violence in certain areas will go down, because when you legalize marijuana, or you legalize, remember when we legalized alcohol during Prohibition, certain types of crime actually dropped, because those types of people are no longer, being funded by quote unquote dirty money. Now they have to go legitimate, right, and pay the taxes. So that's one thing I think would work, and we're already starting to head towards that way. In fact, funny thing is, I've talked to my dad. I said, "Hey, what if they start legalizing marijuana?" He said, "You know what? I would want to participate in investing in that." I was like, "Oh, really?" So it's interesting that the older generations, even in the Chinese culture, are accepting of that as well.
One of the biggest sources of revenue that the state has is the wellhead tax. So what about expanding energy production in Texas?
I would think that expanding energy is important. If we can get different types of more wind farms, and even consider researching how nuclear would affect us, would help our power grid in general.
What about oil and gas and fossil fuels?
Well, we rely on that for our economy. I don't think that oil and gas is going to go away anytime soon, and I think that we need to find a balance.
But why not? Why not just? I mean, we have in Texas an infinite supply of natural gas. It has no value at the well. We flare it. Why not capture more and more and more of that in pipelines and export it?
I think that'd be a great idea. I mean, if the research shows that it would be effective for us to do that, then I suggest that we do it. As long as we follow federal guidelines, being that we are at the state level only, and it follows, it doesn't conflict with that. I think that we should follow those explorations.
Yeah. Well, I would like to see Texas Democrats influence national Democrats on that whole issue and encourage more offshore leasing, discourage regulation on pipeline construction and operation, et cetera. In other words, loosen it up so that we can produce more and export more and be energy self-sufficient, especially now, given international relations. Imagine how badly Europe would love to import more LNG from the United States if it were available.
I mean, I think those are good ideas, and I think our state operates differently than other states, and so
it does.
we have to we can't, as much as we would like to influence everyone nationally. You know, nationally they have to look at the whole, our entire nation as a whole versus just us, and so we may need to have conversations about making concessions for our state.
Yeah. You said, I'm going to switch subjects now, Daniel, and then I don't mean to monopolize all the questions. I'm sure Jimmy has some more for you. But you said very early in this conversation about getting hassled by Republicans. What does that mean? What's your experience there?
Well, recently, and when I say hassled, I mean us as candidates as a whole, right? Not just myself, but just as a whole, we've been dealing with signs being sprayed and signs being taken down, even though we've asked permission from the landowner. Just examples like that.
Oh, having to do with your campaign?
Having to do with my campaign, yeah. And then in addition to that, you know, my daughter, my son, sometimes they wear our t-shirts. You know, they don't wear it to school, but they wear it maybe to outside school functions and things of that nature. And sometimes other students whose parents may be Republicans, according to my kids, you know, they say things, right? My kids, sometimes they don't get invited to certain things at their friends' parents' homes because they know that I'm running, even though some of them are actually Chinese. And I've had people that I've helped out during Harvey basically say that they don't want my yard sign in their house, which is fine, right? Nor do they want me to come into their home anymore because I'm running as a Democrat, you know. But they had no problem with me going to their house to help them fix their home when it was flooded.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of comment that drives me nuts. And you know, you hear it all across the political spectrum. It's back and forth. It's just one of the very sad aspects of the time we live in.
Yeah, and I'll say this: if it floods again, I'll still go over to their house and fix their home. I'll still go over and help them out.
Sure.
I mean,
sure.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're running to be public servants, you know, not private servants.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to add that one of the main points that Daniel has been saying is that he wants to prioritize disaster readiness and cold weather preparedness, because after what we went through last February and last February. So if winter is coming, so Daniel, if you do get elected, then hopefully you won't have to go to anyone's house to fix anything, because you'll be able to change how the grid works and how ERCOT is held accountable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's hope so.
And he'd be generating heat in the state legislature.
I like that. I like that, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, we generate a lot of heat in the courthouse every day, so you know, it'll just be a bigger room.
Yeah, I mean, I think that whole ERCOT episode, particularly in February of 21, is just terribly embarrassing for Texas. I mean, it was a tragedy economically, politically, technically, everything else, but it was a terrible embarrassment for Texas. And I consider it a human error. Yeah, we're going to have cold weather, but we weren't prepared, and our incentives were all wrong. I mean, it wasn't just that the plants failed or certain things failed. they were set up to fail.
You know, we've done extensive discussions on this, Jim, last year. My wife has been in the electricity business for 15 years. But what she told me was shocking. You know, she said, so many people, once it became privatized, so many people profited, instant millionaires, and the kickbacks they sent. I mean, every member on ERCOT is being compensated handsomely by these companies that you know, I mean, anybody could become a provider right now. I mean, literally anybody. And there's so much riffraff going on. I mean, it takes time for the industry to consolidate, to be regulated, but it needs to be regulated. It's one thing to have too much government interference, but this is a public good. This is a necessity. I mean, most countries, this is not going to be privatized, and it will create issues.
And I really do hope, Jimmy, based on what you said and what Daniel said a moment ago, I really do hope that there's more public expression of outrage on all of this, because the consequences of this is that the people have to pay, and pay a lot. And it's a huge burden on many, many people. And the lower you go down the economic scale, the heavier the weight. So it's a very regressive situation. And it should never have been a problem in the first place, especially in Texas.
That we all three of us could agree on, whether what our political affiliation or leanings are. It doesn't matter. It's nonpartisan. This is an issue that affects every Texan, everyone in your district. Daniel, you mentioned Chinese residents that are being standoffish. No matter what ethnicity they are, the way it's working now is the extremism, right? It's so extreme. So don't let it bother you. And the fact your last name is Lee is so hard for people to know what ethnicity. They don't know that you're Chinese, probably.
No.
You could have been related to Robert E. Lee.
That's right.
It could be.
Your last name. So I know that you're spending a lot of time blog walking. You're doing all you can, and you're putting in the work. So I wish you the best of luck. I hope I see you on November 3rd. Congratulate you. And Jim, you're very experienced in local and state and federal politics. So hopefully you could give Jim some advice, and hope he does well. And no matter what, we applaud younger people to run, because it's public service. It's not easy.
Yeah.
Oh wait, well, I want to chime in on that. I'm actually older than my opponent, who's the incumbent. I just wanted to put that out there.
Well, you're the senior member of the election then, but you're still young enough. And given the way that seniority works in the Texas legislature, it's good that you get elected at an early age and win the test of time.
Well, thank you guys so much.
So Daniel, you and I have known each other for a long time, and I respect you for what you're doing, and I second Jimmy's comments in commending you for undertaking this, because I know how absolutely difficult it is. You reference to the sacrifices that your family makes on your behalf and all of our behalf in order to get the right people elected. So I wish you the best of luck, and we will stay in touch.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and look forward to seeing you guys on the other side of November 8th. Remember, early voting is October 24th. And the last day to register to vote is October 11, 2022. We're in Fort Bend County, Katy, Richmond, Rosenberg. And once again, Daniel Lee, Lee, for House District 26, your state representative out here in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Jim.
Great having you, Dan.
I'll see everyone next week. Thank you for tuning in.
Next week.